Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books, and my name is Drake. Recently on the channel, I did a big video on some surprising hookups in the Marvel Comics universe, and it quickly became the most popular video on my channel, which really shouldn't come as a big surprise. But there were a lot of people who were upset about the lack of entries of characters hooking up in alternate universes. So today, I've got you covered with a few of those. Now, I do want to point out that this is not every single alternate universe crazy pairing, it's just some of them, because there can be multiple videos made on this subject. And if you like what you saw today, then maybe we'll make more. So at the very least, enjoy. Okay, let's start off with one of the biggest misconceptions in all of Marvel history. Jen Walters, aka She-Hulk, is one of Marvel's biggest players, having slept with many big-name characters. One of her conquests is one that you've most likely heard of down the grapevine, the Juggernaut, an Uncanny X-Men number 435 in 2004. This was seen as very out of character for Jen, considering that the Juggernaut is a pretty serious villain. You know, like the time that he destroyed the Twin Towers in 1991. Yeah. Needless to say, it was interesting that She-Hulk explicitly denied ever sleeping with the Juggernaut not even a year later in her solo series. In fact, it became a major recurring joke. Okay, so clearly this didn't happen. So how would the Uncanny X-Men story be retconned? Well, this and several other plot holes were directly addressed in She-Hulk number 21 in 2005, which revealed that citizens of Earth 721 have taken vacations in a universe that they call Earth B, or as we know it, the mainstream Earth 616 comic continuity. When on vacation, some residents of Earth 721 become complete copies of their Earth 616 counterparts, in a sort of secret identity theft. Turns out that She-Hulk was a victim of this, and literally on the next page, Jen confronts her doppelganger about sleeping with the Juggernaut, which turns out is exactly what happened. So did the Juggernaut actually sleep with She-Hulk? Yes, but not the main universe one. Hopefully that puts an end to that misconception. The Wolverine of Earth 12025 has been described as Wolverine meets Teddy Roosevelt, but still Canadian. He's the former Governor General of Canada and has his skeleton laced with golden adamantine, the metal of the gods. That was all we knew about this Wolverine when he first appeared in the Astonishing X-Men series in 2012, but when he resurfaced 1 year later in the Extreme X-Men series, we learned just where he got that metal from. His boyfriend. That's right, it was revealed that the Governor General and the demigod Hercules fell in love. But Zeus was not a fan of any god but himself consorting with mortals. So the couple was banished to Tartarus, where they fought for around 3 or 4 years before escaping. And this is probably the manliest pairing in all of Marvel. This next one was only given a single panel in Dark Reign Fantastic Four number 2, but in it, the Earth 616 Reed Richards was scanning the multiverse for worlds where the superhuman civil war peacefully ended. That took him to Earth 3490, where Captain America was married to Natasha Stark, the Iron Woman. The two calmed each other's more aggressive behaviors, and the act was ultimately resolved. So yes, fanfic writers, Stony is canon, in an alternate universe, where Iron Man is a woman. One of the biggest pairings that people got upset about when I didn't include it in my last video is Ultimate Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Now, this one has definitely made rounds on the internet on several online listings, but that doesn't make it any less strange. Okay, so in the Ultimate Earth 1610 universe, Wolverine was lost in the mountains and nearly died until he was rescued by a woman named Magda. Of course, this led to a sex scene, which is fine and all, until Magda's husband walks in, Magneto. Since then, Magda has had 2 children in the form of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. This, of course, leads to it being ambiguous on who the father is, Wolverine or Magneto. If only the Ultimate Marvel Universe had their form of Maury or Jerry Springer or whoever does those shows these days, I don't know. Anyway, we had some hints about twincest for a while, but it was made explicit when Wolverine recounted the time that he watched them doing it. Yep, Wolverine literally watched a couple of siblings banging when he might be their dad in the first place. That is just... it's weird, man. It's weird. Speaking of the Ultimate Universe, this is Brian Michael Bendis. He is one of Marvel's biggest writers, having his fingers in so many books. he likes Kitty Pryde. He likes Kitty Pryde a lot. Like, so much so that he shoehorns her into almost every book that he writes, and it's become a running joke in the comic book community. This is Ultimate Peter Parker from Earth 1610. Bendis has gone on record to state that he writes Ultimate Peter Parker like himself, which makes Peter a self-insert. Well, lo and behold, Ultimate Peter Parker and Ultimate Kitty Pryde got together, and it even includes such imagery as Kitty imagining a future with Peter as a married couple. Well, that relationship ended up falling apart, and her new boyfriend was Kenny Kong McFarland, an even more obvious self-insert of Bendis. I mean, just look at this guy. Now, I need to point out that I have nothing against Bendis as a writer. In fact, I really like a lot of the books that I've read of his, but I would really not be opposed if he stopped hooking Kitty Pryde up with all these different characters so that he can vicariously date her through them. It's hard to mention alternate Marvel universes without bringing up the Exile series, which literally revolves around hopping through multiple different universes. One of its recurring characters is Mariko Yoshida, aka Sunfire. Now, Sunfire is already a somewhat obscure character in the main Marvel 616 canon, where he's a Japanese mutant superhero and a former member of the X-Men. He is also directly responsible for the formation of the original Big Hero 6 team, which, quick side thought, yo, Marvel, so your original Big Hero 6 books weren't very good, but why the hell haven't you capitalized on how good the Disney movie was and reboot it in the comics with similar characters? Okay, sorry, thank you for indulging me on that brief little tangent. Anyway, this female Sunfire from Earth 2109 visited Earth 8545 with her team, the Exiles, where she met Mary Jane Watson, who is that universe's stand-in for Peter Parker as Spider-Woman. The two of them hit it off pretty quickly, but the team had to move on, causing the two heroes to part ways. Issues later, Sunfire was trapped back on Earth 8545, but took this time to grow her relationship with Mary Jane. The two were falling for each other super fast, but Mariko had to leave, never returning before her untimely death only 3 issues later. That's tragic. So that was a downer, so let's end things off on a goofier note. This last pairing comes from the Marvel Now What one-shot. In this one-page story, comedians Wyatt Cenac and Elliot Caelum talk about how Thor and Storm's powers should cancel each other out, which would make them kind of soulmates. Then we get a mention of how dangerous it would be if they fought, and how shocking it would be when they make up. Sex lightning. They have sex lightning. I really think that Storm and Thor would make a pretty interesting couple. Like, just look at this cute scene from the all-ages Marvel Adventure comic. Yeah, in this universe, Earth 20051, Storm and Thor have been shown to be dating, and it just works. In all seriousness, the Marvel Adventure books are often overlooked since they're made for all ages, but it does have some fun ideas and works well for standard superhero action. They're definitely worth a read if you have the chance. Now, of course, this is not every single pairing in the Marvel multiverse, because there are so freaking many. But if there's one that you guys enjoyed that I didn't cover in this video, then leave it down there in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video with some of those. But hey, if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? In fact, you probably like the concept of the multiverse, so why not watch this video I did on DC Comics' multiverse and the meta-narrative of their multiverse map. It's a lot of fun, and maybe a little more in-depth than random hookups. I don't know. Hopefully you'll like it.